Hey guys, good evening. Welcome to my Best Losses Monday. It's very good to see you guys. Hey Viprahara with Hi Chat. Hi guys, hi Dirke. It's very good to see you. Hello Smash Time Fools. Hello Chess Lions. Hello Dirke again. Hello Shrafi20. It's very good to see you guys. Thank you for being with me here. Well, today we have a very interesting match to look through. It's a match I played last Friday against one and only international master Daniel Rensch. And it was a very interesting match in the sense that, we played 8 games. And if you look at the games, I have to admit that, we both of us played actually reasonably well, and I'm pretty happy with the way I played. I'm also reasonably happy with the result, and I'm also very glad that, hey, 2511, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining the stream. It's very good to see... Oh yes, I've been having that painting Smash Time Falls for some time, actually, and... there will be some changes in the technical stuff very soon. Hey, GM Ra, it's very good to see you. Thank you. It's very good to see you. Hey, Hisoka, it's very good to see you here. So it was an interesting match in a sense that, I kind of didn't know what to think before we started this match, but we ended up having played some very interesting games. I have to admit that I was a little bit starstruck playing this game. After all, I'm playing Danny Rensch, who is a public face of chess.com and chess.com management and everybody else. And the match is being commentated by Grandmaster Robert Haas, who the day before was commentating a match by Hikaru and MVL and people who are playing SEC, and Maria, who was doing the same for the chess.com Russian channel. So it was a very interesting, a very friendly atmosphere, and the match itself was fairly interesting. And I'm going to show you several of the games. I'm going to start with the very first game, and if you look here, it says looks like that game slipped through your fingers. Okay, so that was game 1, and just as a joke or as a illustration of the way match went, this is game 2 that I'm also going to share, that basically says looks like that game slipped through your fingers. Game 3 says looks like that game slipped through your fingers. And then game 4, and I'm sorry, let me look at the report. And this was basically the first game that says tough game, your opponent plays well. To go back to the game 1, I basically knew the openings that Danny is gonna play, because Danny has a repertoire that's basically known to most of his opponents, which is he basically plays a lot of dragon against white's e4. He also plays lots of Neidorf variation. He also plays a particular line in Scotch that we're actually going to see, and he plays London. That is also... Hey, Latino Blonde, thank you for the sub. That's very greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. So... it was, hey Lala, it's very good to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's interesting that, Danny had, and interestingly enough, the game I won, I had, the accuracy was surprisingly high. If you look at these games, I had, the game I won, I had like 98.5, which never happens. And Danny had 95.8, 98.2, 98.6, and so on and so forth. It was pretty impressive accuracy for everybody involved. And to keep going, To keep going, Danny's repertoire is basically based on d4 and London, e4 and Scotch as white, and he plays against white e4, which is what I play. He plays Sicilian, either Najdorf or more likely Dragon. And I'm going to show you the very first game, which was done in Sicilian Dragon. So basically we played, and I'm going to turn on the analysis board so you guys can see this. So it was e4, c5, knight f3, d6, all standard book moves, very, very standard, fairly straightforward. d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and you know, there is something that needs to be said, and I'm actually going to pull up my notes that I prepared for this match. So, you know, I had expected Danny to play Dragon, and my normal lines against, unfortunately, Chess Lions, we kind of have a little bit of DMCA issue with song requests, so we have, yes, Smash Die Full is very excellent prediction. Yes, I lost this game, but I honestly should have won, and you will see. So basically, you know, I kind of grew up playing, you know, against Dragon, who was very popular for white when I was growing up. And the best line against playing Dragon was called Yugoslav Attack, and I grew up in Belgrade, which was then capital of Yugoslavia. So, you know, Yugoslav players played this a lot. Hey, Bullet Mercenary, my friend, it's very good to see you. Let's give a shout out to Bullet Mercenary. Please give Bullet Mercenary a follow and check out his stream. He just recently started streaming and he has great content on his channel. So it's good to see you, Bullet Mercenary, here. And hey, Pizza Racer, thank you for the sub and thank you for joining the stream. It's very good to see you. Yeah, and the funny part is, and I'm actually gonna focus on this a little bit in the first couple of games, because I kind of had him, and then I kind of let it slip it away, you know. So anyway, sub battle Bullet. I don't think we have a sub battle in Bullet recently. I maybe not be understanding this famous wizard. Anyway, so after knight c6, queen d2, these are all standard lines. Basically, white is going to castle alongside, queenside, and he's going to start pushing the pawns. Oh, that's for Bullet Mercenary, not for me. Good. Anyway, so after castle, this is the first big cleavage in this particular position. Normally, and I actually analyzed this game on stream with International Master Mark Esserman, my dear friend, and he basically said that the best line here is the traditional Fischer move, bishop c4, and after bishop c4 you basically play bishop b3, king b1, and then you start attacking, and then the bishop belongs to c4. I actually agree with Mark, and it's everything he said is true. And when it comes to Dragon, Mark is probably one fighting Dragon. Mark is a great expert, and not just Dragon. However, during my preparation and looking at Danny's game, I found a hole in one of his lines in Dragon, and I decided to take advantage of it. Hey, Not Fisher, thank you for the raid, my dear friend, for a party of 6. It's very good to see you. Welcome, Raiders. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who have just joined us, this is my best losses. It's a feature of every Monday at 8 p.m. I analyzed my best losses from the previous week. In this case, these games are from my adoption match against International Master Danny Rensch, one and only Danny. So welcome, Raiders. So this is In other words, I decided to play against Danny's lines here, not to play my normal move, bishop c4, and honestly, it was the right strategic decision. So after I castled, and the topical move in this position is basically d5. And after d5, there is a reasonably new move here that, very frankly, when I saw it during my preparation, hey, Davina, welcome to the stream. It's very good to see you. Please, please, if you don't mind, Daniel, give a shout out to Davina. Davina goes by the handle Twitch Let's Go. She's a WFM, a great streamer and a great friend. Hey, Not Fisher, thank you for the follow, and again, thank you for the raid, my friend. That's very greatly appreciated. So I found a move that I really wasn't aware of before, and that's the move Queen E1. And after Queen E1, the position is, frankly, a little bit difficult for black, because if you look closer, this d pawn is all of a sudden subject to the little bit of threat with the bishop to d1. In other words, queen, by getting itself out of the way of the rook, is creating some threats, and black is forced to play pretty energetically to kind of get itself out of this position. Hey Luigi 1597, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Incidentally, I analyzed, I looked at the games that Danny played on chess.com in this line, and I found some interesting options. He actually played knight d4, but he also played e5, which is probably the best move in this position. The problem with e5 is that after knight c6, I'm gonna actually make these moves. After knight c6, bishop c6, e d5, and then the best move is here actually knight d5, and ignore the computer, because while it settles down, c d5 is actually not a very good move. You have an option to play knight c4, and after knight c4 there is a pretty strong pressure on this knight, and black's pawn structure is destroyed. So it's very easy for white to continue the attack. The bishop ends up being on a very good diagonal, and all the necessary attacking threats were supposed to be there. So if I kind of expected Danny to play e5 in this position, and I was surprised that after queen e1, and there are other lines. He even played some line that's pretty bad, which is actually rook b8, which almost loses by force, because white can play knight db5, and then this pawn is in trouble, and this is a much better position for white. I was kind of hoping he will play rook b8. Of course he didn't, but what he played was a move that's actually pretty bad, and that's the move he played about 7 times before, and it's a move knight d4. Let me go back to this. So instead of this, he played knight d4. And knight d4 is basically a mistake, and it's a decisive mistake in a sense that, and I had this on my analysis, that after taking on d4 and then e6, h4 is basically crushing, because I even had it on my notes. I'm actually looking here at my notes here, and then basically this is the note here. The line ends up here with a note that white is basically have a winning advantage. Why does white have a winning advantage? Because white has already mobilized its pieces. Queen on e1, surprisingly enough, is very well placed, because it can transition to the h4 fairly quickly. White has already started pushing its pawns. The bishop on d4 not neutralized the bishop on g7, and and black is still in the process of development. You know, this bishop on c8 is pretty bad, and it's going to take a long time for black to start pushing its pawns. Danny played a move that's objectively not a good move, but it actually has a very good practical chance. That practical chance is to just play b5, which basically sacrifices the pawn. And I have to admit that move kind of came with a little bit of a surprise to me. And I chose the second best option, and if you look here, you know, bishop b5 is actually the best move. Just develop the bishop and go there. And that's something that actually Robert has mentioned during the game. Unfortunately, you know, I'm obviously not, you know, I was at this point out of prep, and that kind of showed, as it usually does, and I didn't really know what to do here. So I actually spent some thinking and decided I'm going to take with a knight, which keeps the decisive advantage in white's favor, but bishop would have been better. And anyway, so Danny played here bishop d7, which is a fine move, knight c3, which is, you know, kind of an admission of defeat, but that's fine. There was also an option that actually Maria liked during the game, which was basically to push e5. And hey, Sabrina, thank you for the cheer. That's very greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Anyway, so after queen a5, in other words, what basically is happening in this position is that, you know, black is a pawn down, and it's has been strategically basically outplayed. However, there is some compensation here that his rooks are going to come to b8 and on c8, and they're going to exert some pressure on the white king. And that is eventually what's going to tell. I played a perfectly fine move here, which is takes on d5, rook c8, g4, and g4 here was a slight imprecision. The best move here was definitely h5 to keep trying to open the h file here. But honestly, you know, although g4 here is considered to be error by the engine, I am not necessarily considering that to be a major error. So rook a b8, best move in the position. The only option black has is to not count pawns and hope for attack along the open files. Then h5, best move, and it's an obvious move. Queen b4, b3, all perfectly fine moves. And then here is another interesting cleavage in this position. Or a position that requires some careful handling here. It's pretty obvious that, you know, black's counterplay is a little bit hard pressed here to, or will not arrive in time to, because white here is faster. And number two, the black pieces, this bishop is not really participating. This bishop is neutralized by the bishop on d4. This knight has nowhere to go, and so on and so forth. And another thing is, if we were to remove queens from this position, white actually has a winning endgame, because white actually has two extra pawns. Anyway, but, you know, endgame is a very far from a position like this. So then I decided to mix this up, and that's actually not a bad move from a practical standpoint. And I took on g7, and he took with the g7, and this is, you know, +5 or almost +5 advantage for me in this position. I played knight e4, which is the best move. And the thing here is that, you know, the plan for white is very simple. Swing this queen to h4, attack on the h file that's now open, And this knight is actually a very aggressive participant in the attack, and there is also a very concrete threat, knight f6 and capture the bishop on d7. So I have to admit that I really liked my position here, but again, you know, one of the reasons I'm 1950 and I'm not 2150 is that I let this position slip, and I'm going to show how that happened. So queen a3 is the best move. It's trying to mess up the position. Obviously, exchanging the queen is a bad move. King b1, and then knight e8, which is again not the best computer move, but it's a type of a move that you know, offers best practical choice, because very frankly, black has some concrete threats, and one of the concrete threats is a potential sacrifice on c2, and you know, an ability, you know, and the possibility of giving certain checks here and mating the white king and chasing the white king into the center of the board. Hey, Halvard, my friend, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining us. It's going good. I'm analyzing first first 4 games from a match against Danny Rensch. So I figured I'll share this with you guys. Anyway, so this is still the first game, and I played here a move that actually was computer best move. It's queen h4. And then he played h5, which is again the best move. And mind you, this is now +7 according to the engine for white. And here is a problem with you know, playing positions like these. I think up to this point I played a really good game. In other words, I caught Danny in an opening prep. I conducted the attack reasonably well, and all here is perfectly fine. What I failed to do here was to find, and there are basically 5 moves here that basically maintain advantage, and basically black can resign. Best move is probably bishop d3, and bishop d3 basically reinforces queen c2. Queen h2 was perfectly fine, same idea, basically preventing the threat of c2. I very frankly underestimated the threat of taking the rook on c2, and I thought that I could just take and basically queen c2, and I'm going to hide my king and so on and so forth. And I'm actually going to show you the variation that I was calculating, and that I thought that I basically thought that rook c2 is perfectly fine. Hey, Worship, my friend, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining us. I'm showing games to this. Games against my match last Friday against the one and only Danny Rensch. So, and honestly, even something like rook h2 was a perfectly natural move. And this is one of the lessons of this game. I basically let Danny Rensch back into this game. And basically, the move I made was a really bad move, which is queen h5, and you see this is a blunder. And it's a blunder because, you know, rook c2, which is what Danny played. And I was under the impression I can just take, and after queen a2 I can do this, and then I can play knight c3. The problem with knight c3 is that there is no good answer. I only saw it afterwards, after I already played gh5, that after queen b2 I really do not have a very good answer. The problem here is that bishop b5 is threatened, this knight is going to fail, and very frankly I didn't see a way how to avoid a mate, and I'm already here down to 8.4 seconds. So, you know, obviously after rook c2 I then basically spent 17 seconds only to make another blunder. I was kind of hoping for that knight f6, queen f6 would defend the mate on b2, but of course Danny had mate on a2. That, yes, exactly, Halvard. I make a lot of one-move blunders that I simply miss, and it usually happens when I'm down on time, unfortunately. And I obviously need to work on that, and I am working. I'm gonna lower this music a little bit so we can hear each other better. So here is, so basically I managed to mess up a game that I played really well that would have been, avoided adoption on the very first game, which would have been nice, and I underestimated, my opponent's resources. Incidentally, national master, yeah, exactly, worship. It's, so my sense of danger failed me. This is a completely one position for white. Any of these moves, knight, bishop d3, rook h2, queen h2, even rook d2, just reinforcing c2, and Danny basically can resign because he's going to end up here. And, National Master Sam Copeland, and I'm going to give him, yes, Halvard, the trick against me is to try to get me out of opening preparation as soon as possible. That's absolutely true. So I'll give Sam Copeland, who streams in the mornings 3 times a week. He has this great series that basically it's dedicated to solving Dvoretsky's, recognizing your opponent's best resources, and he does that literally every couple of times a week. I think it's time. Thanks. I'm glad you like the music. It's we are now lower just a little bit. We're kind of forced to play non-copyrighted music, which is this, and yes, I'm gonna lower it just a little more. So, yeah, this is probably good. Thanks, Hedgehog. Yeah, and to be honest, I was very upset about this because it would have been nice, and this would have been a perfect game that I would have won. Because I had all the advantages I needed. However, unfortunately, and this happens to a lot, and you will see this in the next game as well, I basically first let him into the game and I blundered. I blundered a very simple combination away. The issue here, frankly, is, and this is one thing about playing Dragon and playing these sharp variations, is that path to win, it can be sometimes fairly narrow. And okay, I lost, but I wasn't discouraged because I felt that I can continue to play these. Basically, I wasn't afraid of playing Danny in subsequent games, and I'm going to show you the very next game. And you will see that this game is amazing because Danny has 98.6% accuracy in this game. I had 94.5, and then the computer basically says that the game slipped through my fingers. Hey, Vandemane Carls, it's very good to see you. Yes. Well, I had to prepare for Grob, and it's true, Halvard, but I was... let me put it this way, I cannot fault my preparation here because after night, this is where, let me show you the line, and why is this acting up on me here? Come on, don't do this to me. Yeah, let me show you. Basically, after the end of my preparation, this is the end of preparation. This h4 move is the last move of the theory/prep. I'm +2. I'm more than happy to, have come out of a prep with +2 against an international master. And Danny is strong. That is a strong player. We can, he gets adopted, but he gets adopted by you know, the likes of Nepo or Giri, you know, 2800 grandmasters, which, you know, so anyway, we'll see. So my problem is, hey, Real 64 Squares, thank you for a raid party of 5. It's very good. He is far from, he's not weak. He's a strong player, and he basically maximized his advantages. It's true that Hikaru once told him that, you know, the reason he is not going to become a grandmaster is because he plays Dragon. And, you know, and there's something to be said about it. But anyway, international master is international master. I would be ecstatic to be anywhere near Danny's strength. But anyway. Hey, Raid 64 Squares. Thank you so much. Thank you for the raid. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, Raiders. This is my Best Losses Monday. This is a feature of my channel. I'm analyzing the games on stream that I played against one and only Danny Rensch on last Friday. This was an adoption match, and I'm showing the game 1. What happened, and by the way, I'm gonna show you guys the report. So report on game 1 was, looks like that game slipped through your fingers. Okay, hey, thank you, Famous Wizard, thank you for stopping by, it's very good to see you. Anyway, so look, slipped through your fingers, fine. Game 2, same thing. And what's very funny is that Danny here has 98.6 accuracy, and yet, even with that accuracy, I managed to have a really good position. But before we go there, let me show you the game. Again, this is, hey, thank you, Real 64 Squares. Thank you for the follow. That's very greatly appreciated. All right, so Danny plays a particular line in Scotch that I'm going to show you that I also had on my table, my preparation table, which is this early bishop d3. In other words, he doesn't play knight c3. The best move is e5, and then best move is d5, and then e5 here is actually by the engine, by the book, and by the history of preparation here. It's considered to be a blunder, and I think he ended up being roasted. You know, he ended up being roasted by Hess, Grandmaster Hess on stream, that, you know, this Scotch is very suspect, and I'll show you. I actually had the line prepared for this. So best move in this position is knight g4, and after castling, bishop c5, and this is already a better position for you know, for black, because this rook cannot move. This pawn is about to fall because it can't easily be defended. The king is gonna castle, and you will see it's ended up being a very interesting game. And again, Danny, you know, played my preparation. So anyway, after queen e2, that's the best move. Queen e7, again, best move, prepare the line, bishop f4. And here is the line that, very frankly, the next move, it's very hard to play unless you had this prepared. And that move, the best move in the position, is g5. g5 is risky because obviously it exposes the black king, but it's really poses problems for white, because if the bishop goes to g3, this is followed by h5. If it goes, and that's what Danny played, which is actually the best move, bishop d5, then black, believe it or not, and that's actually the best line. Forget about what engine says. It's basically to castle and then afterwards to take on e5. And believe it or not, because of this pawn on g5, white cannot really challenge f4, and this knight is basically invulnerable. So obviously this position was on my preparation table, knight e5, knight a5, and this is basically the end of preparation. the line I had prepared, and I'm gonna refresh my memory from the notes. Let me put it here. Is incidentally, this line is called Scott-Schmidt line, and the best lines here is to basically play something along the lines of Rook A1, which is actually, and so on and so forth, and then there is everything to play with. Black is up a pawn, but that pawn is doubled, and this G5 pawn is gonna tell. Then he played a tricky move. After knight e5, he played knight a4, and frankly, that I was outside of the prep, and unfortunately, one of the problems with me when I go out of prep is that the quality of my play significantly degrades, sadly. So I played bishop g4, which is the best move. The only move is queen e1, and then what I needed to do here was I needed to play here bishop d6, and after bishop d6, black is significantly better, has a pawn up. He's gonna take this bishop on d3, and basically after that he may even be able to exchange queens, along the lines of playing some move f4, which is actually a pretty decent move. Computer considers it best. He can exchange and play f5, and believe it or not, this is a very, very good position for black. This bishop is neutralized. This knight is safely protected. This knight really has nowhere to go, and white is here in a little bit of trouble. Obviously, I have to admit, and this is a problem when you start doing this kind of theoretical preparation, I prepared this a day or maybe 2 days before I was playing the match, and I really didn't play enough games in this position to really understand its zen. I probably, if I played 5 or 10 or 15 games, I would probably be able to play. And although objectively white is here outplayed, it's pretty obvious very quickly that Danny here is very aware of the zen of this position, much more than I was. So anyway, so rook a8 is already a pretty significant mistake. Queen c1 is a counter mistake. Knight c5 was better, but then h6 is another mistake. Takes on c5, and this is now, bishop g5 is an interesting tactic because this is pretty. Hey, CDM, CNU, and I actually understood that tactic was there. But I assumed that I would be able to take on d3, and then after d3 I can take on c1, and after then it took with the bishop on c1. I assumed that I am actually fine in this position, but I'm not, and the reason why I'm not is very simple. That this pawn is threatened, and this pawn is fairly weak. The fact that my rook is on this position on the e file is irrelevant because white at any point can play rook e3. These pawns are kind of neutralized, and this bishop is kind of completely out of place. So, and so I decided to kind of try to mix it up. So I played bishop e2, which turned out was actually not a good idea. And then bishop h6, bishop f1, king f1, rook b8, and, after we exchange this, the problem here is that I have, I'm a pawn down, but worse than that, this pawn is very fast and very advanced, and I really don't have any counterplay on the b file, because after b3, rook b4, which honestly is a waste of time. I should have played king e7. I tried to play bishop b4. I don't have, unfortunately, time to play a5 and a4, which is the intention. went back to b6, and you know, for all of this, we ended up, as Maria said on stream, playing up a pawn ending because both those rooks are kind of locked in place and rather passive. Unfortunately, in a pawn endgame, white has these two pawns that I cannot stop. And, you know, this is a perfectly fine move. According to computer, I should have played c4 and pushed the d pawn, but unfortunately, this game... Hey, 2511, thank you for the cheer, very greatly appreciated. Anyway, so after rook a8, king f7, and, you know, Danny was even kind enough to let me promote a queen, but that didn't make a difference. Obviously, this is game over. I have to admit that I was a little bit salty after this game, because this was the second game in a row in which, you know, Danny was playing into my prep, and I then managed to, you know, mess the position up. It's very hard for me to, you know, one of the weaknesses of my game, which is why I'm showing this to you guys, is that yes, my opening preparation is great. I enjoy opening preparation, but I don't have the strategic vision or even the tactical vision to sustain this kind of relatively high level of play that to face very strong players like Danny, and that's perfectly normal. But anyway, so I was a little bit salty after this, and you know, basically, again, I never had +7, but I had +2 after, you know, after basically this bishop g4 move. This is +1, queen e1, and it's -1. So I had a very good position here that I messed up. So, okay, but I wasn't discouraged because, you know, one advantage of playing adoption matches is that it's very easy to, you know, you can throw away a couple of games and still be fine. So I was looking forward to my second game as white. And if you look closer, you will see that actually computer, and you know, this particular report happened during the first 3 games. I have basically first 3 games, quote unquote, slipped through my fingers. Winning 10 in a row is rough, Halvard. I couldn't agree more. And for the record, I tried to do that exactly once against Jessie February, and I know I wouldn't be able to adopt her, but it's very hard. I couldn't agree more. It's much harder to do. You know, even if somebody is 500 points weaker than you, it's tough to do. Anyway, so I'm going to show you this game, and you know, it was pretty obvious, and that Danny is not going to allow me to, you know, test my challenge me in Sicilian again, and he actually didn't play Dragon in one game. So we decided to play, and this was again a little bit of preparation. It was Polario, which is basically knight attack, and if I'll spare you the details, I kind of semi-expected and didn't expect to play this. I prepared this against Anna Muzichuk, and this is another, as opposed to my Adams attack, as opposed to Yugoslav attack and attacks in Sicilian. Hey, Pawn March Destroyer, it's very good to see you, my friend. These are the positions in which I am familiar with the theory, but I don't yet have the zen of those positions. And what was... Hey, Korean American Chess Noob. Hey, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining the stream. Welcome. Welcome to my Best Losses Monday. I'm analyzing the games I played against the one and only international master, Danny Rensch. Anyway, so Bishop d3 is a perfectly fine move. castles, knight c3. This is all more or less standard theory. h6 is a little bit of a divergence. I decided to play knight e4 because I like the positions that come out of it. d3. The normal plan for white here when you play bishop d3, that to play b3 and develop bishop on b2, and this is perfectly fine for white. f5, again, black really needs to be very aggressive here, otherwise it's going to be lost as soon as the white is able to develop, because when you look closer at the black's position, if black loses the initiative in this position, this knight is not in a good place, c6 pawn is weak, and he's down a full pawn. So it's pretty tough position to play. You need to play very energetically. Knight g3, that's perfectly fine move. e4, and then bishop e2 and bishop e6. And you know, this is where I actually had to spend a little bit of time to find the right plan. The right plan here is to basically challenge this pawn, play f3, and basically not allow black to keep pushing these pawns. They're kind of blocked right now, but it's not entirely clear if you play f3 how is white going to proceed. And you know, I've instead played a move that's not so good, which is bishop d2, but this is a move that maintains a solid advantage. Bishop f6, challenging that bishop, that's all perfectly fine. f4, and f4 unfortunately turned out to be not a very good move. What was needed in this position, and obviously, you know, now I will remember that, you know, having played this game, right move is to play f3 and to challenge the e4 pawn, and implicitly basically block black from pushing the pawns further, because this e4 pawn is an easy target. I was under the impression that I can play f4 and basically block the f5 pawn and not worry about pawn on e4, but what I needed to do was to play for a pawn challenge as opposed to the aim for the blockade. Anyway, this is far from a losing position for white, and arguably white is still better here. And queen b6, king h1, all normal moves. Rook a d8, which basically generates some threats because there is this spin. d2 pawn is pinned, and black can basically either play knight e3 or can take twice on c3 and so on and so forth. I played queen c1, which is a perfectly fine move. And then after takes on t3, takes on c3, takes on c3, and takes on c3 again. To paraphrase Hikaru, takes. We end up in this position, which is an interesting position in the sense that, you know, who is better here? I was told by, I was asked this by Hess, and frankly, I didn't think that that was necessarily better. What I thought was that, you know, I'm not worse. Yes, this pawn on e4 is protected pass pawn, it's annoying, but this knight is dead. This bishop is obstructed by pawns. The black's control over d file is not really significant because there is no entry point. And I was under the impression that, you know, if this goes into the end game, it will be fine. And so Danny played a move that he ended up being criticized for and didn't like it, but it's actually a perfectly fine move. The machine likes it. And queen e3 is the best move, taking advantage of the fact that queen is no longer controlling this diagonal to create a little bit of pin. Then he played c4 and the queens were exchanged, which at the time and even now I think basically favored white. So rook d1, b5, all fine, all fine, all fine. The rooks went off the board, and here we get into an endgame. According to the computer, this endgame is slightly better for white. The problem here is that it's not immediately obvious how white can take advantage of its extra pawn. And, you know, I felt, and I still feel, that I didn't really have time to play knight f1 and then knight c3, and which would basically block this pawn and take aim of these two pawns. I also am down to 30 seconds, and I am, you know, as everybody here knows, I'm a little bit too old and too slow. So g5, which is an excellent move, basically trying to take advantage of its pawns. Knight h5, still a perfectly fine move. And I needed to play here g4, which would kind of consolidate the knight and also make the e4 pawn weak. But we're still fine. Knight b7 and queen g6 and knight g3. And here is a difference in, you know, yes, worship, computer wanted b4 and a4 and so on and so forth. This is actually the crucial position in this game. And the crucial position in this game was that this is objectively a better position for white. I didn't judge it so. And I was under the impression that I'm very close to losing here. What basically happened in this, that after, you know, after black took on f4, I played knight e2, which is perfectly fine. But after queen g5, for this to be drawn endgame, or this to be endgame in which white is actually better, I needed to find this, this particular sequence, and sequence was to basically play h4, and I'm actually going to draw this for you guys. Why is this such an important sequence? Because it asks the question of the black king, where does it want to go? If it goes to, obviously if it goes to f6, then, you know, we can just take on f4. If it goes on g6, it's the same. If it goes to g4 and h5, there is a discovered check with d4, and this bishop is falling. So realistically, the only option here for white is to play a king h4, and then after knight f4, surprisingly enough, the black is in trouble because its king is not exactly mated, but it's in a little bit of trouble. And after some normal move, for example, you know, king, you know, bishop f7, king g5, these are like the, you know, king, you know, g3, king g5, king e3, these pawns are basically stopped. This pawn is not there. And this knight is extremely well placed, and it's very hard for white to for black to displace this king for e3, because the only piece that can do it is the knight, and knight basically would need to go something like this, you know, to get to d5. It's like, you know, this, and this, and incidentally, the white knight controls this particular field. So, you know, I have to admit, you know, I'm looking forward to days, I hope that days may or may not come, when I would be able to see, you know, this as a potential tactical threat. I did not. And I played a move, obviously, I'm obviously not going to see it in 16.1 seconds. Instead, I played knight d4, and this basically now becomes a conversion of advantage. It's not that white was without chances. I should have played this better. Like playing g3 is really not the best move. I basically needed to bite the bullet and play a4 and develop the passed pawn. But, you know, g3, and after, you know, I'm just going to show you the end of the game. This was basically, you know, obviously Danny has superior technique, and though he made a fair number of errors, after this I basically, you know, a4 is way too little too late, and then I lost the end game, and this was obviously very lost end game, and that was the end game. It's hard to calculate that, Bilby. I agree with you in 15 seconds, but you know, it's not impossible. And what's very funny, you know, here is Maria in Milano, a dear friend of mine, and we're about similarly rated, and she saw this immediately. Like, this is a type of tactical puzzle that she exactly see immediately. In other words, and I think I repeated this plenty of times, my library of motives does not include this. You know, I don't know what this particular Chinese ideogram means. It wasn't part of my repertoire of motives, especially not the one that I can recognize with 16 seconds. So what's my takeaway from this game? Missed opportunity. This was definitely a missed opportunity, because frankly, this particular endgame, I'm pretty sure I would be, you know, okay, sorry, I'm making bad moves here. You know, I'm pretty sure that this game I would be able to save, probably not win, but save. But, you know, I think working on improving my repertoire of motives has become very important. I think my opening preparation is really excellent. I think I have some understanding of some certain basics endgames. But this, and if we go back to the game one, ability to recognize opponents' resources is something I basically need to work on. And, you know, we're going to go from there. I'm going to show you one more game. But, you know, and this incidentally was match number 20, and I have to, for me, playing matches again, these matches against stronger players are immensely beneficent. Oh, thank you, Parmarch Destroyer, I appreciate that. Anyway, are immensely beneficial because it makes it straightforward to uncover weaknesses in one's game. And anyway, I wasn't really discouraged. I was a little bit tilted, but this was game 4, and I'm going to show this to you because, and this is another, if you want, success here. You know, I basically, Danny decided to try London, and we played London, and you know, this is all theory, and I'm gonna spare you the details. All of these are basically best moves. They're all theoretical moves. Bishop e7, knight e5, rook c8. You know, and here is one motive that incidentally I wanna kind of stop here. That actually Grandmaster has pointed out in his analysis. Yeah, he was afraid of my opening prep, so he played the London. And incidentally, in game 5, he tried Sicilian, and I played Adam's attack against him, and he stopped playing Sicilian altogether. So, some level it was this. I here missed the opportunity to significantly improve my position by playing bishop c6. To take the knight with a pawn and then immediately play c5. I didn't see it. I wanted to put the rook on c6 for the simple reason that you know, I want to play against this rather misplaced queen on c1. But the zen of this position is that being able to play, to take with a pawn and then push c5 and then get rid of this bishop by playing bishop d6 and then putting the rook on b file is basically the plan that one needs to follow. Incidentally, the very last game, which was game 8 of this match, we played this again, and I won that game, and I made the same error in that game as well. In other words, again, I played rook c6 instead of bishop c6. Anyway, to cut the long story short, takes on d4, castles, I'm doubling the rook, so basically I'm hoping to play here some sort of a minority attack and also to block this b pawn forever being moved. So after knight bishop f3, and incidentally the position is now according to the computer, and I also thought so as well, this is now dead even. Queen d8, which is fine. a4. a4 is a move I didn't expect. And incidentally, Danny played this in another game, in a game 8. And, you know, this being my best losses, I'm not going to show you the last game of the match, the one that I actually won. But what happened is that he wanted to push b4, he put a rook on a3 and a queen on a1, and in the end I managed to... He ended up succumbing to the attack because most of his pieces are concentrated on the, on the queen side. So bishop d6, we want to get rid of the London bishop. Takes, queen d6. It's actually been more beneficial for white to exchange queens, but knight e4, takes, and a5. a5 is objectively not the best move in this position, but it offers best tactical chances. For the very simple reason that it grabs the space, and also where there is always a threat for white to establish an outpost on c5. So if white contrives to say put the queen off, and this is incidentally why queen c1 is better than a5. Basically, what if you're white here, you want to play knight d5, knight b3, and knight c5. And that's for black to play b6 is very hard. And I analyze this game a lot, and basically lots of bishop moves are based on the fact that black basically want to try to prevent that knight maneuver. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I play knight c4, which is fine, wasn't the best move. Knight e3 and knight c6. The reason this is actually considered the best move is that knight on e3 is actually further away to getting to c5. And with knight g4, queen a6, basically I'm trying to grab this pawn, knight e5, f6, which honestly, in retrospect, was a mistake. Again, I'm down to 15 seconds, that's my excuse. But that also illustrates that, I kind of overestimated my position. So I played knight g4, queen h5, which incidentally, I'm still pretty proud of this move because it severely limits where the white knight can go. Then he played knight e3, queen c7, f3, and I probably, knight c2, and, I kind of shouldn't have allowed him to take the pawn on e6 here, but again, I'm down to 11 seconds. Inaccurate f5, and now I'm playing basically a 10-second bullet game, unfortunately, and that has never been my strongest suit. And to cut a long story short, Danny collected a lot of pawns, and I was you know, I was here obviously hopelessly lost. A5 was a blunder, and you know, after this pawn endgame is completely lost. Okay, so what's the takeaway from this particular game? The takeaway from this game is that it's fairly hard for me to that I let myself be outplayed in the middle game. And I have to say one thing, like, you know, I'm not supposed to play f6 here. You know, just playing against this pawn and basically tolerating the knight here was actually better, because this knight is actually not doing that much. I should have played queen c7 and then ask the question, how is, you know, like, how is exactly white gonna defend this? Then it needs to do something along the lines of c4 is an option, which actually computer likes a lot, and so on and so forth. You know, Frank, based on the series with Danny overall and this match and everything else, I need to do I think priorities are, I need to improve my tactical acumen. I need to improve the number of motives that I'm able to recognize, especially to recognize quickly. I also need to pay more attention to the opponent's resources, and I don't know if you were here for this or not, but I need to talk to Sam Copeland, who is streaming Dvoretsky's manual on recognizes your opponent's resources, and you know, I should probably try to work a little bit, you know, be a little bit faster. So there's probably going to be a stream dedicated to Tactics Tuesday, as suggested in the chat. But what was interesting here is, you know, and I'll spare you the details of this game. This endgame is not very interesting. This is like hopelessly lost. Is that, for example, you know, I'm familiar with the theory of London up to, you know, about here. And the strategic blunder in this game was that to fight for advantage, black needs to take with a pawn and then push c5 immediately. Then get rid of this bishop, put its pieces on the b file, pressure this pawn, and I think that's a path to fight against London. I find London very difficult to play with, and you know, it's I think it has a reputation of being an opening that's easy to grasp, but the subtleties in London are actually very significant. I remember playing a game against Grandmaster Gata Kamsky, who loves to play London, and boy, I got completely killed very quickly. It's a tricky opening, and it has plenty of secrets, and it's not that easy to master. In other words, it's easy to learn so you can play it, but mastering it, understanding it, then it's actually more difficult. Like, you know, for example, taking with the pawn here. This was a clearly superior move than taking with the rook and then pushing c5. But I didn't play it. And even in the game that I play afterwards, that actually ended up winning, I still made the same error that I took with the rook. So, takeaways: improve your tactical acumen, watch for your opponent resources, and lastly, be more aware of the strategic subtleties of positions like these. And that's something I'm going to work on, and hopefully we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm actually gonna, let me see, there is one game I also would like to share with you guys, and that's the last game Daniel and Danny and I played in Sicilian. Okay, yeah, and the reason why I want to show you this game is that this was the game in my favorite opening. It's Adam's Attack, and I'm just gonna go through it fairly quickly because I think this was game number 5. And I've played plenty of games and about quite a few strong players in Adam's Attack, which begins with the move h3. And this is one of the positions that I understand the zen of it. And Danny played Dragendorf against Adam's Attack, which is incidentally what Grandmaster Naroditsky also plays. And I felt that I ended up being in a fairly decent position. It's a fairly aggressive opening. And, you know, I ended up exchanging queens. Yes, Marshall, thank you. I really do like playing Adam's Attack. So basically this is now, for all intents and purposes, a neutralized opening, which in itself is a success for me, and I really managed to play this rather badly. And I played it rather badly from this position, which is basically +1 for white, because what they wanted to do was to continue the attack against, even with the queens off the board, which is not the smartest decision in history of the universe. So I played knight f6, and knight f6 was not a necessary move. I could have, computer here recommends knight b6, which basically, forces black to play rook b8, or even here the best recommendation is to play rook a7, but either of those moves are pretty bad, and then gives white enough time to grab control of a d file. This knight really doesn't have many spaces. This knight is pretty aggressive and can go between b6 and b5. But I decided to play for some attacking motives. Cangrejo95, I love Chessbra. I'm one of their supporters, and I like what they're doing. I consider Eric Hansen to be a personal friend, and I've actually played my second adoption match, one of the matches that I lost against Grandmaster Aman Hambleton. So I have a lot of respect for Chessbra. Alright, so I was here being seduced by the fact that, that knight on f6 is pretty strong. And then I played g5, and then after knight f6, I basically went into forcing of the position. There was no need to play knight f6, that was a strategic error, and there was definitely not enough juice in the position to basically play h5. And after h6, I basically managed to mess this up even further. I played knight h6, and then I've decided, okay, I'm gonna play knight f6, and black king is basically stalemated. The problem is either I have no way of following this up, and to cut a long story short, I ended up getting busted rather quickly. And I wanted to show this game because this is objectively my worst game of the match. I ended up losing it very quickly. And the takeaway from this is, again, underestimation of opponents' resources. Taking on e5 was perfectly fine. Taking to, playing knight f6, aiming for an attack in this position where there are not enough resources for it, was just not necessary. And objectively, this white is better here. And there are plenty of ways for white to kind of try to play this for its advantage, or even try to draw, given that this is an adoption match. Knight f6 was just a forcing of the position. I shouldn't have done it. Anyway, so bottom line, I managed to win game 8. I am looking forward to my next match that's going to be announced. My next stream is going to be at 7 a.m. New York time. My Nicholas studies chess with International Master Elizabeth Pechts. I am going to have another learning stream with International Master Alex Estana Lopez. It's going to be at 6 a.m. I'm sorry, those are EU-friendly times. There will be another arena. Sponsored by Open Field Media on Saturday, and there will be plenty of other streams. There is some collaboration with Maria Yemelyanova Photo Chess. We're probably going to do a sub battle afterwards, and yes, chess-based lesson with Alex. And yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get to update that. We're going to have that stream will be on October 20th, but it wouldn't be. It's not an irregular stream. Anyway, thank you guys. It was very good to see you. And that's all for tonight. And the biggest question of the night is, who are we going to raid? You know, I'm actually going to send you to one of my dear friends. It's NM Bada, who is having a hyperbullet match, I think, with Alexandra Botes. So I'm gonna send you to him. Give him a follow. He's a great guy. He actually, I have to say that he has made an immense progress very recently. And give him a follow, give him a sub, say hello for me, and I'm gonna join you very shortly. Good night. Thank you for joining, and I will see you guys soon. Bye. Okay. Pizza Racer, thank you. And Dirk, thank you for being here. Thank you for March Destroyer. Thank you guys. Let me say hello to Buddha for me. Bye.